Two things that I do not remember when David strode out onto the field to slay the Philistine Goliath. One was fear, but the other was negotiation. Barring negotiation, any talk of surrender, compromise, or any way to settle this thing against that giant Philistine without violence. There are 1,000 platitudes and cliches I could throw at you that violence isn't always the solution, but when it is, it's the only solution. There's a million of them. Those of you guys who are out in the tactical community that are friends of mine, you've heard them all before, so I won't waste your time with them, but I'll give you a little taste of the other side and the end result. When it gets down to having to use violence, then you are playing the system's game. The establishment will irritate you, pull your beard, flick your face to make you fight, because once they've got you violent, then they know how to handle you. The only thing they don't know how to handle is nonviolence and humor. John Lennon, shot and killed on the front steps of his New York apartment. Let us dedicate ourselves to what the Greeks wrote so many years ago, to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world. Robert F. Kennedy, shot and killed. Nonviolence is a powerful and just weapon which cuts without wounding and ennobles the man who wields it. Martin Luther King, shot and killed. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. Mahatma Gandhi, noted racist, but that's a different game. But I should point out the end is the same. Shot and killed. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. Truer words were possibly not ever spoken on this earth. These were the words of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And on the 22nd of November, 1963, likely by members of his own government and intelligence agencies, this man was, wait for it, shot and killed. But I say unto you that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. A well-known Nazarene by the name of Yeshua, better known to the world as Jesus Christ. And need I point out that he was scourged, tortured, murdered, nailed to a crucifix, and speared in the side by the spear of Longinus, a Roman centurion. Gets a little complicated, doesn't it? Whether we are talking in this world or the one to come, nonviolence, the result of nonviolent resistance is always the same. But it gets a little more complicated. Let me take it in a different direction for a second. We all know this, man. Be peaceful, be courteous, obey the law, respect everyone. But if someone puts his hands on you, you send him to the cemetery. The words of Brother Malcolm. How did Brother Malcolm meet his end? Shot and killed. Multiple handguns and 2 barrels worth of buckshot in his guts. There's no easy answer, but I would submit to you that one should err on the side of caution when one considers his response to an enemy that will not relent. Because even that Nazarene is also known for saying, do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. whether we are dealing with enemies in the earthly realm or enemies in the spiritual realm, often the outcome is predetermined. Death is the end result. It's a matter of how you go out and the legacy you leave to those you leave behind. So, what is the difference between that Nazarene and all these other folks that we listed? People like Lenin, RFK, MLK, Mahatma Gandhi, John F. Kennedy, Malcolm X. What is the difference between them and that Nazarene? Only one conquered death and rose from the grave. And only one guaranteed a victory to his followers. Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace but a sword. But more importantly, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. The fate is likely the same. If we resist, we face death. If we do not resist, we face certain death. We are admonished as brothers and sisters in Christ to stand firm in the face of those who would fall against the church, in the face of those who would challenge righteousness, in the face of those who would challenge the divine authority of our Lord and Savior. That, I submit to you, is a hill worth dying on. So let us bring not peace, but a sword. And when we stride out onto the field to face our Goliath, let us face it proudly, without fear and without compromise. The end is already determined. Do you want to go out in a way that honors yourself, disgraces yourself, or departs from all interest of self and honors God? Choice is yours, boys and girls, but the fight is definitely coming. The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and no one else's on the planet. Not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, not sponsors, and I cannot stress this enough, certainly not employers. They have been adjudicated thought crime in all jurisdictions. Consider yourself warned. They are coming from the heart. They are guided by the mind. They are guaranteed to stretch open that unwilling maw, rip the scales from your eyes, and choke you, if necessary, to death with an unfiltered dose of truth cock. Welcome back, boys and girls. It's time once again for the Sunday sermon. Happy to have you all on board. Looking like we got a lot of people over here in the comments. Going to do that roll call here in a second. Right now, I want to see where the fire is in the building. Everybody in for the drum roll, please. Where you at, people? Come on. Hard charging out of the starting gate, as we always come charging hard out of the starting gate. With that bumper music, Red Desert gut stomping rock and roll band from the smoldering embers and crumbling ruins of the once great American city of Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is probably going to get some more fires in the coming days. The name of the band is Red Desert. The name of the track is Older No Wiser. Every week I get a little bit older. Every week you guys get to decide if I've gotten any wiser. Some weeks I do better than others. I think this might be one of those weeks, brother. I think this might be one of those weeks. I got to tell you, man, I was feeling it this morning. Got there to On Fire Ministries, Pastor Matt Shea here in Spokane, Washington. Had a dear friend of mine, sister in Christ, that came out with us to church today. Charlie was there with us. Whole lot of singing and praying, and that, oh my goodness, that sermon was fire, brother. You missed it. I don't know how I'm going to follow that, but fortunately, most of you guys don't follow Pastor Matt online, so I've got an open audience, and the bar hadn't been set so high. Let's see who is on board. Of course, Brother Roman, one of my oldest and dearest friends, with his lovely wife, Carrie, waiting in the wings somewhere. I just know it. We're going to see her on the roll call as we scroll on down, and lo and behold, there she is. How about that, man? OG, Reverend Ranger, and Prophet of Doom, Mr. Dennis Weimer, another one of my oldest and dearest friends. I think he's only off from Roman by about a year and a half. In fact, when I first started hanging out with Dennis, there were a couple of occasions where Roman and Dennis crossed paths. Roman, you will remember that. It's back when he was still running around with a fellow by the name of Marco. We can tell the story another time. But anyway, man, good to have both you guys on board. The divine Miss M.A. OG Center Sister herself, watching the storms in Oklahoma, large tornado on the ground up there. Man, we had some interesting little natural maladies and disasters up here in the Northwest this week. Had a little quake off the coast of Oregon. Somebody remind me to get back into that as we go on through. Right now, I just want to see who all is here. The mighty, mighty Stone. Yeah, look at all these early peeps. Like everybody. The coins show up early and stay late. Hey, brother, that's what we need. That's what we need. Not just for the sermon, but for the kingdom, brother. Forget what I'm saying. Forget anything coming out of my mouth. We're going to need that for the fight, brother. We are going to need that for the fight. And I know that I can count on every single one of y'all. And I know that the kingdom can count on every single one of y'all, regardless of whether you're walking in the faith or not. All you guys are righteous men and women, man. All of y'all. And if you weren't, you would not be here because I wouldn't have time to break bread with you. I might reach out to you, try to bring you to the truth, try to bring you to the light. But I wouldn't be breaking bread with you, man. Least of all on a Sunday. Speaking of Sundays, Deacon Mark in the house. And I know Edith's got to be out there on the porch with you, maybe imbibing some adult sodas, smoking a fine cigar, and more power to you, man. What do we got? Olivia B for the sermon. All right, right on, right on. That's a nice one, right on. Scrolling on down, see who else made it out. Brother Bill Wade. Hope you're standing strong, man. Hope you are standing strong. I appreciate you more than you know, brother. And you already, man, we're here. We're here. We're connected. And by the way, Bill, I want to take a moment just to say a little side prayer for our brother Doug, man, Turtle. He's up against it in a whole lot of ways right now, brother. He's, in fact, he probably ain't going to make it out for the sermon today. So if all of y'all can take some time, you guys know Doug, you know Turtle. He's always here in the comments. He's a dear friend, and we are bonded. He was my first victory for the kingdom. He was the first man that I was able to bring home. And God bless him, man. He's really up against it right now. If you guys could just take a little time, remember him in your prayers, it would be much appreciated. See who else we got on board. Still scrolling, still scrolling. There is Bill. Rolling. Joel Allen Jackson. Good to see you, man. Glad you made it out. And, of course, Joey, the Sultan of Sarcasm. Netflixing with the wife tonight. Hey, brother, that's cool. I'm glad you took the time just to dip in, even if just to say hi, man. You never fail to impress, brother. Anytime you pop up, the wit and the sarcasm is always appreciated across platforms. I see you pop in over on Twitter every now and then. It's a fantastic thing. By the way, speaking of Twitter, if any of you guys are over there, check and see if I'm coming through on Twitter, because I'm hearing that the Twitter feed for the sermon has actually been cut off. I don't know if I'm going to have to go and pay the money for a blue check, but if the money's going to Elon, I'm not sweating it. It would give us a little more reach, and I'm all about that. David, glad you made it out. And, of course, the lovely wife, Miss Charlie, upstairs. It has been such a blessing, man. These past few weeks, just acclimating to living under the same roof, and everything's been fantastic. David was baby going, yep, that's true, Ryan. That's true. Of course, and again, I actually brought that to everybody's attention during the opener several weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago. There was a reward. There was definitely a reward. It's one of those little known facts. And again, one of the things that I love about being brothers with Ryan is that we can talk about these things. You know, he doesn't share the faith, but I promise you, and I will say this to anybody's face, I will stake my life on it. I guarantee you he is better schooled in matters of faith, and particularly scripture, than I'm going to say at least 8 out of 10 of you guys that are out there, regardless of whether you share the faith or not. And yes, we do need to discuss that fact in its entirety. There was a reward, something that people aren't really aware of. There was a reward for slaying the Philistine giant, okay? That, to me, does not take away from the greater point that he walked out of there without fear, because, if you stuck me in the ring, if you were to say, hey, Bart, man, Tyson's doing this comeback thing and he needs a tune-up fight before this little publicity piece with Jake Paul, man. You mind doing a 5-rounder with him? I would jump in there. I would definitely jump in there, particularly if the reward was up top. But if I looked you in the face and told you that I was jumping in there fearlessly, yeah. Uh, Either A, I'm a liar, or B, I am in need of even more serious psychiatric help than most of y'all already thought that I was in need of. So yeah, that when we got it, when we're telling this story, man, it's important that we got to tell the whole story. And I'm going to be touching on something a little bit later, right after the rabbit hole, speaking with regard to that about telling the whole story and how we handle telling the whole story and reactions to the whole story being told. Yes, there was a substantial reward for slaying the Philistine giant. There certainly was. Um, but David, when he stepped out in front of that giant, he stepped out. He wasn't talking negotiation, and this was the brilliant part of this because I had this thing set up, and then this morning at On Fire Ministries, and you guys can find that online. On Fire Ministry Spokane. Check out Pastor Shay's sermon from this morning. He did a lot about fearlessness, and he touched on the David and Goliath thing, and just pointing out the perspective of that. It's like, he's standing in front. David was a tiny little fella, man. He wasn't no monster. He was formerly a shepherd, right? This isn't like a trained warrior. This isn't a guy who's even got that backwoods farmer Sergeant York thing where he's been, shooting at stuff since he was knee high to a grasshopper, and he built some crossover skills that might have been helpful. He was pretty good with a slingshot. That's it. And he stepped out in front of this giant absolutely without fear. He turned around, he looked, he had to look at an entire army behind him, standing there pissing themselves. Family members, far greater warriors than he could ever hope to be in and of his own accord. And they said, hey, man, that reward was available to any of them, too. Any of those guys could have stepped up, looked at the reward that was offered. You look it up in the scripture, it was a pretty substantial reward. Any of them could have stepped up to take that. And they were all terrified. David stepped up without fear. But the other thing he stepped up without, he didn't try to, and it was beautiful the way Pastor Matt went into that. Pastor Matt he really nailed it, man. I was up out of my seat and bouncing around like a lunatic. But there wasn't no talk of negotiation. There wasn't any talk about, hey, can we talk like grown men and come to some sort of compromise? Hey, man, how about if I give a little bit, are you willing to meet me halfway? There was none of that, man. He stepped out. He didn't see a giant. He saw a kingdom, and this was a roadblock. That was the core of Pastor Matt's message. Man, I can't even do it justice. You guys can find it online. On Fire Ministry Spokane. He was bringing it today, man. I was bouncing around, and we had a little blessing as well. No, Emmy, I have not gotten a chance to see the Carpenter movie. I have not, but I need to check that out. You can give me a little capsule review in the comments if you want. That would be cool. Phil Lewis watching from Tyler, man. Hey, sorry, man, missed you on the roll call. And of course, yes, our favorite Frenchman, Brother Clem, driving. Much love right back to you, brother. And wow, man, we got more people popping up. Wayne Sharp, good friend of mine from all the way back in high school days. And yes, hello right back to you, Mr. Wayne. Happy to have you on board. Yeah, man, I was blessed this morning. There is a dear friend of mine. I'm not going to mention the name, but when I was going through it, it was a very dark moment, and I was not in the faith at the time. I went through when Melanie and I divorced. It was not pretty. Now, Melanie and I have leveled everything out now, and we're on speaking terms, and we're cordial adults. But in the thick of it, man, it was ugly, and I was always just one traffic altercation away from an active shooter incident. I was not in a good frame of mind. And there was this one very, very pretty young lady, and she made no secret of her faith. And she worked at a Dutch Brothers coffee stand just up the road from here. And that was the Dutch Brothers that I hit every morning before I would go out and, handle my stuff for the day. And that beautiful young lady was always there with a smile and a hug and oftentimes a prayer, right? You guys know, even when I wasn't walking in the faith, man, I would never go out of my way to actively disrespect the faith. I would take my little jabs, hey, you stole all our holidays. I'd take my little jabs and stuff, but I wouldn't just let people run roughshod over that. And she asked if she could pray for me a number of times where I really looked like I was in a bad place. And those smiles and those hugs and those prayers got me through, man. They really were instrumental in getting me through. And keep in mind, not only was I not of the faith, but actively pushing away the faith at that moment. And this morning, it got to come full circle because God is great and He works. He works that divine plan, not even when you're not looking, especially when you're not looking. And we got in touch earlier this week, and I invited her to come to church with me and Miss Charlie, and she came to church, and this was her first time at this church. She has been devoutly faithful for her entire adult life, and just a wonderful, wonderful human being with a smile that can light up the room. And there was something there for her in church today, and she got some deliverance and some healing, and it was a beautiful thing, man. It was a really, really beautiful thing. And so God bless her, and God bless every single one of y'all. I'm very happy to have found this home church. You guys can find Pastor Shay online. Go ahead and again, it's important to tell the whole story, isn't it? He was in the military. He was an attorney. He was a politician for a number of years, and came to the Lord and became a pastor. He runs his church up here. When you do Google searches on him, you're not going to hear about the redemption, because they don't do that with people on this side of the fence. You are going to hear character assassinations. You are going to hear unfounded allegations. You are going to read a heck of a lot of things that are going to paint him in a very, very bad light. What I am here to tell you is label lynching is a real thing. All right. And I'm going to leave it at that. Anyone now, the bar is so low for what our culture and our mainstream media outlets dub right-wing extremist. So it's obvious that someone like that is going to get painted in that light. Don't let that discourage you. Listen to the man's sermon, read the stuff that the guy has done, listen to the things the guy has done, check out his podcast, and make the decision for yourself. Give the man a day in court. That's all that I'm asking. What I will tell you from a personal perspective is, I like Pastor Shay. I like him a lot. I respect the man a lot, and he's one hell of a preacher, man. One hell of a preacher, and he's got a great message, and he keeps it focused, and he keeps it centered, and he's so far from the Westboro Baptists of the world. He ain't laying down judgment, man. He ain't laying down tearing people down. He is about healing and building people up, right? Everybody's got a place at this table. When you're ready to walk in the light, just bring it here, man. Lay that burden down, pick up that cross, and we're here for you. So anyway, if you guys are wondering where I'm spending my Sundays and also my Wednesdays in the evangelism class that Pastor Evan just started up there, I am honing my gifts, and hopefully will be better able to use those gifts to serve the kingdom. So I'm working with Pastor Evan on an evangelism class that I'm studying under Pastor Evan up there now. And on Thursday, the men's ministries have been a gift and a blessing, man. It's brothers holding brothers accountable, and it's not, again, it ain't about tearing people down. It's about lifting people up. It's a fellowship of people who share, among other things, just trying to be better men, and that is so failing in this culture. But anyway, I didn't come here to spend an hour talking to you about On Fire Ministries. You guys can check that out yourself. On Fire Ministries, Spokane, Washington. Check out their online outreach. You can find them on Rumble for sure, and I'm fairly sure that you can find them on YouTube, but I'm not 100% on that. But check them out. On Fire Ministry Spokane, Pastor Matt Shea, SHEA, and check it out. What is this? Those people are the ones that God uses to the benefit of the kingdom. People like you. Hey, man, I'm trying, brother. I'm trying. All I am, brother, is, you heard me say it before, man. I'm just a crane operator with some opinions. I'm a crane operator with some opinions, but I'm also a child of God, and I've been given a gift. And for decades. I've used it to aggrandize myself for decades. I've used it to shred other people and tear them down. For decades, I've used it to just spew noise when I should have been spitting signal. Um, I'm bringing that together and I'm putting it to work, and it's a good thing. Let me give a nod to a couple people real quick, and then we're going to jump off into this thing because we got a lot of stuff to go over today, and I'm just feeling like charged up right this second. My battle bottle from Iron Infidel might have something to do with it. It's loaded up with my liquid enthusiasm, my caffeinated Arnold Palmer, as it were. And so it's a good thing to have on board. A couple of shout outs real quick. First and foremost, always to Roman and his lovely wife, Carrie, and Roxy and Allie, and the bevy of beautiful women over at opiumtales.com. They are the erotic pinup supporters people. Roman's one of the most creative guys that has ever been a long-term part of my life. He's just a fantastic human being. He's doing a lot of cool watercolor stuff over there, and he's got 2 books out now. The one that he's really putting the push on is Roman Freely. It's a collection of his watercolor stuff. And of course, from Dork to Pimp Daddy, you can find both of those under Roman Riva on Amazon. Check it out, man. Beautiful naked women done in a tasteful way. Beautiful watercolor work and testosterone-driven commentary. It's a Reverend Bart trifecta. Go over and check them out at opiumtales.com. And, of course, my Viking brothers, Casey and Dusty Tellison, Nordic Smoke Barbecue, the only legit barbecue in the Inland Northwest, period, full stop. End of statement, done. Hey, but what about sit down, shut up, you're wrong. Nordic Smoke Barbecue. You got Dusty over there, the pitmaster. The Viking Longship smoker trailer is hitting the asphalt seas, and they are catering events, and they are setting up in parking lots. You can find them online. Check them out on social media for a schedule. You got Dusty, the pitmaster, over there, and of course Casey over there as well, who is now, on top of being a combat Marine, he has passed the bar. He is a practicing attorney. He's got a book out as well called Freaks of a Feather from Latop Press out of Spokane, Washington, also available on Amazon. It is a war memoir that started out as a suicide note. That should be all the description I should have to give you. The guy's got a gift. He is a phenomenally gifted writer, and so go check that book out. Go check that book out and find out where Nordic Smoke is going to be setting up. If you're here in the Spokane area, don't forget they are smoking birds for the holidays. So get your turkey in early. Before we jump up into one little holiday tradition we got up here, they have been smoking my Thanksgiving turkey since 2014. So this will be the 10th year that they're going to be doing my Thanksgiving turkey. Every year I have a little ritual that I do, and I tend to show up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I go to Winco. All right. Winco is, they're a grocery chain that's primarily in this part of the world. They're employee owned. They're fantastic. They take good care of their people. It's just, again, vote with your dollar. It's one of the few powers that we have left. And I vote with my dollar, try to spend my money with Winco whenever I can. Every year on Thanksgiving, I go right before, when it's time to get that bird smoked for the holidays. I will go usually at about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, right? Because they're open 24 hours at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Literally no one is there. And so it's the best time to go. So I go and I go to the big freezer case where they have all the frozen turkeys. You guys know it. You see it every year. And I pull every single bird out of the case and set them all on the floor. This is why I can't do this during regular business hours, because you can already see how this looks like the actions of someone who is completely out of touch with reality. But I pull every bird out of the freezer case, and there they are on the floor. And then my Colonel Kurtz moment, there they were on the floor, pile of little birds. Anyway, and I start putting them back. I get the biggest one that I can eyeball. I pick it up. It's like, all right, that's a 22 pounder. And I set that off to the side. And I start putting them back. Okay, 18, 17, 21. Nah, close, but no, 20, 19, 23. We got a new winner. Boom. We set the 23 down, put the 22 in, and just to go back in. So I go through systematically and pick the biggest bird in the freezer case. And it's what's ruckus. Just tell them all it's ruckus. You and turkeys and ruckus. Yes, it is. I love you, sweetheart. Yeah, it's a Bart ruckus, but it's a fun Bart ruckus involving poultry. Leave it alone. Just leave it alone. Too easy. Anyhow, I always wind up with the biggest bird in the case, and I think the current record. Um, Dusty will have to check me on this one. I think the current record right now is like 29 pounds. Um, I could be wrong about that. Something in my head is telling me that we actually made it over 30 pounds once, but I'm gonna say 29 pounds, and I'm gonna leave it at that. You know, they must have a nickname for it, but yeah, probably. Oh no, it's the turkey guy, and like a voice that's spoken only in hushed whispers. You know, the turkey guy. So take care of the people that take care of me. Take care of the people that are taking care of the show. Talking about Roman over at opiumtales.com, and of course Casey and Dusty Tellison over at Nordic Smoke Barbecue. So, you guys ready to jump down a rabbit hole? Hope you're ready to jump down a rabbit hole. This is going to be your rabbit hole for the week. Are you ready? Are you ready? First of all, it's Ryan's rabbit hole. Yeah, right on. So where's my crowd, man? You guys are disappointing me. What's going on out there? Anybody? Right? Okay. Caught you guys napping, man. Caught you guys napping. Pay attention. Pay attention. Ryan's rabbit hole. You guys know the story with the rabbit hole, and we're gonna get more into that. Here in a bit. Let me just fade out that thunderous roar of applause and get everything queued up for the next soundbite and make sure it's extra strange. Sorry, guys, just me with the desktop. The laws of Solon. Solon. You ready for this? That is your search term. Solon. Solon. The laws of Solon. You guys know that I am a big fan of Western civilization. You guys know that I am what they call a Western chauvinist. And it's so funny when I hear Western chauvinist used as a pejorative, as if somehow that were something to be ashamed of. Oh, well, because it got hung on guys like the Proud Boys and things like that. And he's a Western chauvinist. I do not believe in cultural relativism. I do not believe for 1 second. Well, you can't say whether one culture is better or worse than the. I don't believe that. I absolutely do not believe that. I have never believed that, and I think that it remains self-evident in most cases. Now, you can argue about the relative ups and downs, pros and cons about different civilizations, but do not tell me that it's not fair to judge another culture so better. Stop it. Stop it. Cultural relativism is right there with moral relativism. If you look at the West and all of the things that Western civilization has brought to the world, and those things have their roots in the sovereignty of the individual. Now, before Solon himself, let me give you a little breakdown. He basically, he was the prime statesman of Athens. You guys know the separation between Athens and Sparta. And if you don't, that's the reason for the rabbit hole. Go down that hole and figure out the difference between the Spartans and the Athenians and the divisions. But anyway, he was their lawmaker. He was their statesman. He was, for all intents and purposes, their prime minister, for lack of a better word. He was the top dog. And he was there for about he was there from 630 BC to, somebody fact check me on this one, 630 BC until 560 BC. He was the lawgiver for Greece. He had been preceded by a fellow by the name of Draco. Have you guys ever heard the word draconian? Of course you have heard the word draconian, and when you hear it, you know that draconian means harsh, scathing, violent, unforgiving. Yes, the Solon talked about it in the Atlantis story. Thank you, and that is another fact about Solon that we'll let him go down the rabbit hole on that one. George, glad you made it, brother. Cold, yep, the Upper Peninsula, man, it has got to be it has got to be a frozen tundra up there right now, man. I hope that you're weathering it well. Yes, the Solon talked about in the Atlantis story. Yes, he followed Draco, and Draco, of course, the root for draconian. That means he left his mark on history in a way that we still associate legal harshness and harsh legal codes with his name. Death penalty for everything. Oh well, yeah. All he did was jaywalk. Okay, that's a misdemeanor. Misdemeanor might get off with a scourging. You know, minor. What we would today consider minor offenses, even in red cities, were basically death under Draco. And Solon, being the lawgiver, basically established a new legal code. And it was the first step toward sovereignty of the individual and less, for lack of a better way to express this, less the state being the final arbiter and ruling with an iron hand over the people. That fear, where fear was the motivator of the law, rather than taking any other factor into consideration. Draconian means what it means for a reason. Those laws were harsh. They would sever a hand. They would kill you for what today would seem like nothing. There were any number of things. If you owed people debt, they were able to enslave you until that debt was paid off. Something that we saw later on in Europe and the American colonies, the prospect of a debtor's prison. It's like, okay, I owe you a debt, and so now you own me. You know, uh, that's a pretty primitive way of thinking legally. Anyway, so Solon brings these laws into effect. Um, and I've got a whole list of them here, but we're just going to touch on the bullet points. One of the things that he did was he made it possible for any citizen to bring a lawsuit. Up until then, it had just been possible for a victim to bring a lawsuit. You could see how this would be a bit of a problem if the victim were, say, dead or old or feeble or of a lower social order than the person he was making the complaint against. So you're already going in with one strike against you. He made it possible for any citizen to bring a lawsuit. He abolished debt slavery, took it completely off the table. You cannot be enslaved because you were in debt to a person. Now, that doesn't mean we just, tither and yawn, and you can, fail to pay your debts and things like that. You just couldn't be enslaved to the person that you owed money to. Clearly, there are some people who are more affected by that than others and more upset about that than others, but that'll be part of your rabbit hole, won't it? He divided people into income groups, social classes, for lack of a better word, that it was based in basically everything that they brought to the table. It was like, if you're bread, wine, oil, whatever. If you were a grain farmer, if you were someone whose vineyards produced wine, if you were, basically establishing income groups and social classes. Probably most important was a system where your wealth was the basis of the social position or political position that you held, and not a matter of birth. Now, a lot of people would be like, oh, so basically the richest person. No, not in and of itself, but it introduced the concept of meritocracy. You could not succeed in an economic system like what was established in Greece if you were a dishonest person, if you were a lazy person, if you were just unmotivated. You work or you don't eat. And those people who not only worked but made it possible for more people to work more efficiently, or created an implement which made that farm more efficient and could trade based on that implement. It was a meritocracy. So your wealth rather than your birth. It's the antithesis of what people would say now. It's, oh yes, if somebody like Elon just runs the show, huh? Because it was, well, actually, yes, because Elon came from a lower social class and built that wealth, as opposed to, say, the child of a BP executive, or the child of of a Rothschild holding an inordinate amount of power. Now, of course, those people still hold an inordinate amount of power. It's just done under the table. It's not socially accepted. Here is the thing. All of those laws began a push in Greek society. And you know that the Greeks and the Romans, thank you. And thank you. That's exactly where I was going. The Greeks and the Romans, that's the roots of the West. What he established was the beginning of a democratic way of rule. Okay. Democracy in the truest sense of the word, not in the mob rule, two wolves and a sheep voting over what's for dinner kind of way, but in the sense of the people actually having some say, the people actually having, and one of the other things that he did was create an assembly, right? And everyone was represented in the assembly. All of those social classes that he had established, everyone was represented in that assembly. It was the founding of modern representative government. Okay. That is what it is. I want you to look into every one of those laws. I want you to look into what he did, and I want you to look into why he did it. Greece, when he took over, while having been under draconian legal codes, something that should, the law and order crowd, very fond of saying that, well, harsher laws and everything. It was going horribly for Greece, particularly with the leadership, because there was no accountability for those who we would today consider elite classes. Corruption ran absolutely rampant. If you were born into a wealthy family, you could exercise your will over anyone of a lower social class. If you were born poor, not only was there, it wasn't like there was a cap, right? That glass ceiling that we hear about now. No, there was a stone. There was a stone on your foot from birth. There was no crossover classes. There was no hope of progressing beyond your station. And the wealthy took care of the wealthy, and the powerful took care of the powerful at the expense of the people who actually made that society work. You understand? Kind of vaguely familiar, that, isn't it? Almost as if there were a push on to take it into the very territory that Salome was trying to bring us out of. Telling us lowlifes and unwashed deplorables that we need to just keep our opinions to ourselves, that our intellectual betters supposedly should be able to rule over us with an iron hand. Know your role, shut your mouth, right? And a clear division of social classes that today they pay lip service to supporting the interests of. And yes, Thomas, I do, but that's a different rabbit hole. He gave us the roots of that. So how is it that when you had such great men, and such great thinkers at the time that created these great civilizations rooted in the principles established by these great thinkers, how do we keep falling to the wayside? How do we keep straying from those fundamentals? How do we keep becoming our own worst enemy? How do we keep undoing ourselves from within? And the answer is easy: incrementally. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Even in the last 200 plus years of the American experiment, Things are clearly laid out and perfectly functional. If you have ever taken the time to read the entire United States Constitution, and if you were even tangentially familiar with the men behind it, read their personal correspondences, the kind of minds that we are dealing with. These were great men by any stretch of the imagination. Solon, great man by any stretch of the imagination. Marcus Aurelius, little tangent there, but a great man and a great thinker. The seeds that they planted, this society and civilization that they have tried to establish here and create, when staying rooted in those fundamentals, we don't stray. We prosper, and we have for thousands of years now, for millennia. The West, we have mapped the world. We have conquered the world. And we have elevated the station of every society and every people and race and bloodline and demographic that we have come in contact with. We have brought them those gifts. Sometimes we found things that we could assimilate and improve on. This is history. This is the law of conquest. Nothing has been able to tear down Western civilization except itself. How did we stray so far? I want you guys to do that dive on not just Solon, but all of the legal codes that he established. I literally don't have the time to cover everything, but literally every single legal principle on the books in Western civilization today, we have Solon to thank. But like everything else, we lose contact with it incrementally, a little bit at a time, just a little bit at a time. And we tell ourselves that this little bit won't hurt. We tell ourselves that slippery slope is a fallacy. We tell ourselves these things until we butt up against where we are right now. Yeah, thank you. Another thank you, Tom. Almost wasn't signed because the founders wanted even simpler language to be used. Here's a term you guys may or may not be familiar with. If you're a comm block weapons person, you know that the Soviets tried to make their weapons what they called Russian peasant proof, to where you could get the most slope-headed Neanderthal from the most remote regions of Siberia and put this thing in his hands and he could make it work and kill effectively with it. Mosin Nagant, Kalashnikov, Semenov, Tokarev, all of these designs, Russian peasant proof. Solon laid out a code that was tyrant proof. The founders of the United States laid out a code that was tyrant proof. What they didn't make was that thing that made Russian weapons work so well. They didn't make it idiot proof. And they didn't make it deceiver proof. And the one thing that they couldn't have made it completely impervious to is self-interest proof, weakness proof, comfort proof. We've slid, man. I don't need to tell y'all that. Why would I need to tell y'all that? We're looking at it. We're looking at something big coming up on Tuesday. Very big moment. It's going to chart the course. Lament where we are. Definitely. It is worthy of lamentation. Lament where we are. But realize that where we are is entirely avoidable. And if we pull through, if we cleave to the most basic principles, including, thank you, Tom, moral principles going forward. It doesn't have to be this way. Look into the great minds of the past. Look into Solon. Look into his laws. These are the things that are bequeathed, and this is how civilizations prosper and survive over the decades and the centuries and the millennia. Is great men lay it down and they bequeath it to their sons and their sons' sons. Here's the blueprint. Don't stray from this and you're going to be fine. But there's always that one son's son somewhere down the line that goes, yeah, but this isn't really that big of a deal. We've got to resist that temptation. Good gracious, Bart, are you talking about absolutes? Absolutely. That's a prospect that a lot of people need to get more comfortable with. There are always gray areas. There are always exceptions. Exceptions do not only out of necessity, but for purposes of discussion, exceptions do not diminish the rule. Solon laid down some very solid legal codes. Great thinkers, great Western thinkers throughout the years have laid code upon code, and they see where the earlier iterations failed. They make adjustments based on that, and then they bequeath that to their sons and their sons' sons. And we look back and we ridicule those people. We don't ridicule Solon because I think probably at least half of you here tonight might have been the first time you heard of him. But those who have a little bit more high profile, we ridicule those men now. We're taught to ridicule and despise those men who, once upon a time, we were taught correctly to revere. This is where we get lost. It is not about the men, great thinkers though they are. It is about the principles that they lay down. It is about the guidelines that they lay down. And every time we catch ourselves thinking, no, we're smarter than that. We're more progressive than that. Okay, show me the result, because the result is all that I care about. I don't care about your imagined moral high ground. I don't care about your feelings. I don't care about your emotional hangups. I don't care about your pronouns. I don't care about any of these things. I care about the results. What is the end result? What is the end result? And every time we stray, we get handed our ass. And we keep coming back and saying, hey guys, all right, the original blueprint worked. This new thing that we tried, it didn't. And every time there is some, it's like the college kids. It's like the college kids with the Che Guevara shirts. Yeah, well, 100 million died here. Yeah, but that wasn't real communism. Oh, okay. Well, how about this one where another 50 million died? Yeah, but that wasn't real communism. Okay. Venezuela. All our best thinkers, all our intellectual betters. Venezuela, what a magnificent example of successful communism. This is within my lifetime, by the way. Just within my lifetime. Well, Venezuela, there's your example. It's working out great. All the people are happy. It's wonderful. This is true communism. This is what communism really looks like. This is the first, so you can forget about the Soviets and Pol Pot and Mao's Great Leap Forward. You can forget about all that stuff, man. Look at Venezuela, man. They're doing it, bro. They're doing it. They're making it work. Until Venezuela falls apart, predictably. And what do we hear now about Venezuela? Yeah, well, that's not real communism. Okay. Enough. Solon. The laws of Solon. Solon and democracy. Solon Athenian democracy. Pick your search terms. Go down that rabbit hole. And look at every principle in and of itself. Look at every one of those principles and think about the brilliance of that within the context of its time frame. Slavery in that day and age was a given everywhere. Kings ruling over peasants was a given. The wealthy landowners subjugating the poor and the serfs was a given. Someone who was in a position of leadership, why would he do anything to upset that balance? He'd be considered a traitor to his class. You're going to treat the serfs like they're human? The hell is wrong with you? These were great thinkers. Worth looking into. Solon, father of democracy. Solon, Solon's principles, the laws of Solon. Look it up. That's your rabbit hole for the week. So we're going to jump on into this thing. Again, we know what's happening Tuesday. Just a couple of bullet points that I want to hit. But before we get off into the bullet points, I want to get into a little something that I hit that everybody missed. And a little something that I think would be a teachable moment for some people. It's a post that I made. True test of Christianity isn't just loving Jesus, it's loving Judas. I got a rise out of some people. How many of y'all really thought it through before you responded? How many of y'all took the first obvious observation from that? It's loving Jews. Oh, it's loving people that betray us. It's loving people that do us wrong. Yes, it's that. But it's also recognizing the importance of people to the story. If God is indeed omnipotent, if he has, and omniscient, that means he's got an infinite set of backup plans to an infinite set of backup plans to an infinite set of original plans, no matter which factor could go wrong or who failed that particular part of the plan. You know why you need to love Judas? Not because we are scripturally admonished to love those who hate us and love those who hurt us, but in particular, with regard to Judas, you need to love him because without the betrayal, there is no crucifixion. If there's no crucifixion, there's no redemption. If Christ isn't nailed to that cross, if Christ doesn't die on that cross, if Christ doesn't bleed out and get scourged and tortured and murdered on that cross, guess what? None of us are coming home. So there's plenty more reason to love Judas than just the scriptural admonition to love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Christ continued to do that regardless. On the cross, with them poking spears in his side. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. It wasn't the scriptural admonition to love your enemies. There's a reason why Judas is important to the story. Here's one that'll bake your biscuits. If it was necessary that he be the betrayer so that the redemption could be carried out, does he go to hell? Or did he serve his purpose, his higher purpose to God, and he's seated beside Jesus in heaven? That's a little something for you, don't you think? Because he had already accepted Christ in his heart, would he not, in fact, be forgiven for his betrayal by the same Christ who was hanging on that stick, asking for forgiveness for the people who were putting spears in his side? You don't love Jesus. You don't love Judas because we're admonished to love everyone. You don't love Judas because we're admonished to pray for those who persecute us. You love Judas because His betrayal made it possible for Christ to be crucified. Now, don't think, as I've had this discussion with a very dear friend of mine, and we're going to get into that in a second. You think God didn't have a backup plan? If Judas would have found his spine and grown a set, Peter would have broke weak. If none of the disciples broke weak, someone close to him would have betrayed him. If no one betrayed him, the Romans would have just said, you know what, enough of this Jew prick, and nailed him to the cross on general principle. You need to love Judas because it was that very betrayal that made it possible for our Lord and Savior to die on the cross. That's an unconventional way of looking at it, and a lot of people would disagree. Let me ask you something. People who disagree, there's disagreeing and keeping it civil, and then there's disagreeing and just being a prick. You guys know the whole time that most of y'all have known me, that I walked in Ossetru, I would take my playful little jabs when it was clear that they were playful little jabs. But I carried an overall respect for the faith and people who followed it. If we are truly walking in the light and we're truly trying to reach people, does it well behoove us to take jabs at people who are outside the faith simply for the sake of taking jabs? If someone, getting back to Malcolm X from the opener here, someone puts their hands on you, if someone comes out hard charging and they're slagging the faith, bucking up is one thing, and one should. But if someone is trying to engage in legit discourse who does not share the faith, and I'm one to talk, I'm holding myself accountable here too, right? Because I'm telling people disengage on a whole lot of levels. Do you think it serves the faith for people who might be on that fence, to people who are trying to be respectful to it, but they're not quite there yet, to call them out their name, to ridicule them? Is that going to win anybody? Or is that just going to double someone's resolve? Are you going to be the one who someone is referring to when they go, dude, I can't be a part of this. I look at every one of these assholes, and if that's what it is to be a Christian, I don't want a part of it. If that kind of hate is what's inspired by that faith, then I want no part of it. How is anybody going to argue with that? I'm very fond of using the term evangelism by example. Sometimes I don't necessarily live that. But I'm certainly not going to win anybody for the kingdom by just going out of my way to pick fights with people who are actually trying to actively engage, particularly when it's people who know where they're coming from. If an idiot is spewing from a position of idiocy, that is one thing. You address that. If someone's knowledgeable and they're trying to engage in discourse, what you may think is just taking a ha-ha, look at me jab is undoing a hell of a lot of work that somebody else might have put in. Is reinforcing the very thing that is driving people away. Don't be that guy. I'm not fragile. And I'm not going to go shredding people either, because I'm just as guilty. I'm just as guilty. But if we could all take a moment to check ourselves on that, evangelize by example, man. We have people trying to take, if they come out and they're slinging venom, disengage. But if they're coming out in discourse, you go into it with an open heart, an open mind, and a willing soul. Because that person, maybe they are an asshole. Maybe they are just trying to get a rise out of you. Maybe they are slagging your faith. Or maybe, just maybe, they haven't completely processed what it means to be a Christian. And if you step up and show them that that's what it means, they want no part of it. I have to check myself on that 100 times a day, man. You guys know how I'm wired. I am a crass and vulgar creature by nature. So I got to watch that. I had a rule once, face to Facebook. Face to Facebook. Don't spew on social media in a way that you wouldn't if someone were sitting right across the table from you. Read the room. Doesn't take a lot. I have people in my circle that walk into faith. I have people in my circle who do not. You're not going to bring anybody home by showing them that home looks like that. The intent might not be there. Doesn't matter. Because once it's out of the gate, there's no pulling it back in. Doesn't matter what your intention was. Just like I was saying about Salon and democracy and different systems trying out. I care about results, man. I care about results. And I'm not patting myself on the back, not puffing my own pecker. I'm just taking a teachable moment and trying to get some lessons out of it. Be better, people. Be better. I said. And understand your own limitations. Understand that there are people out there. Understand that there are people out there who know the Bible better than you that aren't walking in the faith. One of the things I'm going over this evangelism class that I talked to you about, Pastor Evan, is when you bring your testimony, you better know we're doing exercises like that. People pushing back. Yeah, but this. Yeah, but that. How do you carry your testimony through that? You stay rooted in truth, but you evangelize by example. Taking sniveling shots at people who, whether you know it or not, are 10 times more versed in the scriptures than you are. That ain't the way to play it, regardless of intent. That needed to be addressed. Now I've addressed it. Go forth and do no harm. Vaya con Dios. All right, let's jump back into this thing. Animals is Casus Belli. What is it about humans? You guys heard about Peanut the squirrel this week, right? You guys heard about Peanut the squirrel this week. Look, man, I'm not going to make light of it. I had never heard of Peanut the squirrel until this week. I was completely unaware of this thing as an Instagram phenomenon. I didn't follow it. I didn't know. But this thing came up, and then I read the case, and I found myself like really, really hacked off. On a personal level, it didn't affect me, but it's like, wow, man, that's really where we are. That's total garbage. But I looked at the outrage, and it brought up a question to me of why is it that we care so little about our fellow man, that we care so little about ourselves as human beings, that we will let any sort of indecency go for years, decades, and not step up. But the minute somebody does something bad to an animal, Oh, well, now we got a moral quandary. Now we got an issue that absolutely has to be addressed. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, people, but it's like we all know what is it? Bones out for Harambe. The gorilla that was killed by the zookeepers because he got too close to the little boy. And man, they could have avoided that. Man, they could have this, they could have that, whatever. That's not really related. What I'm talking about is Peanut the squirrel, and what I think he had a raccoon buddy of some sort. Somebody help me out here if you're more familiar with the case. Government overreach, government intrusion and regulation, unnecessary government regulation and intrusion into people's lives. Guys, we know this is a thing. It's been a thing forever on any number of levels. Pick it. You cannot get through the day. There's a book, and I cannot remember the name of it right now. Somebody else thinks of it. This guy went over all the federal codes, and he said how to be a federal felon, I think is the name of the book, something along that line. How to be a federal felon. There are so many laws and regulations on the books that you literally cannot get through a day in America if you leave the house at all. Hell, man, if you roll out of bed in the morning, you cannot get through a day without committing at least one felony under federal law right now. That is how overregulated we are. And nobody raises up on that when it's right, because we're just hairless monkeys. Right, Judas was good till he killed himself. Yep, we can revisit that one, Tom. Sorry I didn't catch that earlier. We're so categorically and abjectly overregulated. Raw milk, that one Amish farmer. Let me tell you how bad. It got. The Amish who don't participate had a full caravan this week. Now this is just a sidebar here. They had a parade of horses and buggies with Trump 2024 banners. And 80,000 of them as a block voted for Donald John Trump. Why? Because there is one, and to a lesser degree, two other Amish farmers who are selling raw milk that the government outright persecuted. No one had ever been harmed by any of their farm products. No consumer of those products had ever complained about those products. But the federal government, the FDA went back again and again and again, enabled by agents of the Department of Justice, armed federal agents, busting into an Amish farm because the guy continued to sell raw milk products. And the only people who got upset were the Amish. Fred was the raccoon, hun? Okay, cool. I assume that's what you meant. Nobody got upset with the Amish. We can't build on our own property. We can't capture rainwater on our own property in a lot of states. And people make a big to-do about it, but they really don't. But you let that government overreach affect the cute little squirrel and a raccoon, and now everybody is up in arms. I read this story about Peanut and apparently Fred, the raccoon. That was crap. That was crap. That thing was cute as a button, man. How many of you guys that were raised, like I was raised in rural North Carolina. I know there's plenty of people who are country people, that were raised around that stuff. It's like, no, like everybody knows that squirrels can carry rabies, that raccoons can carry rabies. Everybody knows about this. You don't really risk it, but you got to look at the totality of the situation. The guy knew the risk. He took it on. He raised this doggone thing. Adorable little critter. Adorable. Totally unnecessary. Because some Karen, some hashtag Stasi Karen, I don't know if I've still got my hashtags up here. I don't think that I've got my hash. Yes, some hashtag. Stasi Karen decided that she had to report it because he's got a squirrel, and squirrels are wildlife, and this got to be against some kind of law. Is it affecting you, lady? No, it's not. But I'm going to report it anyway. Why? Because I'm so weak and ineffectual in my own life and have no control over anything else that I'm going to do the only thing that I do well, which is obey orders and narc people out to the government over nonsense. Yes, it's a crappy story. Yes, it's outrage. Why did it take a squirrel? Why did it take a cute little squirrel before people went, this government regulation thing is just totally out of hand? Why did it take a Stasi Karen reporting a dude with a cute squirrel to make the greater public think, people really need to mind their own business, man? What, COVID didn't do it for you? The whole reason for the hashtag Stasi Karen? I should point this out. Actually, you know what? I don't need to point this out, but I'm going to. If you think it can't happen here, and I'm not going to revisit the whole thing because we've done complete sermons on this, there's no point in further driving it home. If they will report you for a squirrel, if it is so bad that the Spokane Police Department had to put out a public service announcement telling people to stop calling 911 if their neighbors weren't masked or social distancing during COVID, don't tell me it can't happen here. But I'm just puzzled as to why it always takes, and by the way, if you're wondering, God is my higher power, that's the shirt today. I'm wondering why it always seems to take some cute animal before people finally get outraged. Neighbors reporting neighbors for not social distancing, and people lost temporary custody of their kids during COVID. And you'd have the sporadic uproar here and there, but no national change in the zeitgeist, nothing. Neighbors reporting neighbors for having their own political opinion, people losing their jobs and their livelihoods. And people go, wow, that's signs of a dangerous trend. Neighbors reporting neighbors for not being properly social distanced or for having their lights on at weird hours. Neighbors swatting other neighbors, calling in complaints of armed suspects and people being violent, knowing that they're not being violent, and cops showing up and kicking in doors and people getting killed. Isolated incident, anecdotal, this and that. But no huge uprising. But a Stasi Karen reports a neighbor for a squirrel, and granted, cute squirrel, adorable. Just as wrong as all of the previous examples. So why is it that the squirrel is the one? President Trump and Elon Musk were so moved by the whole thing that they felt the need to comment on it. I'll give you another example. Anthony Fauci, responsible for God knows how many people dead. Oh, I'm not talking about over the COVID thing. I'm talking dating back to the 80s with his legendary faulty response to the AIDS epidemic. How many people's lives got destroyed because he made the public assertion that it could be transmitted through saliva in a kiss or close proximity. Look it up. Fauci, bad response to AIDS. Something along that line. Look it up. His track record is irrefutably bad. People died. AZT. was researched in the 1970s as a cancer treatment drug. Do you know why the FDA disallowed it as a cancer treatment drug? Because it laid bare and destroyed the victim's immune system. And Anthony Fauci, the Lord of hosts, according to the medical establishment religion, put the push on for AZT to be the first and for the longest time only acceptable treatment for HIV and AIDS. People died because of Anthony Fauci. That's before we even get to the COVID epidemic. We recommend these jabs. Oh, the jabs will stop transmission. Okay, they won't stop transmission. Okay, they won't stop transmission or it won't stop you from getting it or spreading it. But go ahead and get the booster anyway, even though the first one didn't work. Oh, we're going to recommend you get a third booster because the first two boosters didn't work. And don't worry, you can still get it. You can still spread it, but it'll make it harder for you to die. Oh, well, masks aren't going to do any good. Oh, actually, masks are fantastic. They're phenomenal. Oh, well, not those masks. Cloth masks are totally useless. Oh, no, wait. N95, those are great. And in fact, N95, you should be wearing 2 of those. That's right. 2 is always better than 1. Oh, wait, cloth mask. Cloth masks are perfectly acceptable. Oh, wait, we don't need cloth masks at all. It's not safe to be out in public. We got to stay 6 feet apart. Anybody know where he came up with that? No. People died because of this guy. You want to know when people started calling for his head? Not after all the lies, not after all the double talk. What made people call for his head? Somebody in the comments. What was it that made people go, Fauci's gone too far and we've had enough? Why? Thank you, Brother Dennis. Thank you. They really got mad when they found out Fauci was killing puppies. Yeah. You're wrecking people's lives. You're driving policies that are destroying economies. But boy, turning those sand fleas loose on those beagles' heads, that's one toke over the line. I'm not saying that it's stupid to be upset about these things. I read the thing about the beagles and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. But here's the thing. I already wished for horrible things to happen to Anthony Fauci because of what he had done to the economy, because of what he had done to people's lives, because of how he had usurped on his highly questionable record inordinate amounts of power. Yeah, you can't find anything to criticize about Trump. I can absolutely find something to criticize about Trump. He handed a ridiculous amount of power over to Anthony Fauci and never took it back from him. Never took it back, even when it was clear that it had been a bad call. Don't tell me I deified Trump. That, the Syria bombing, any number of things that I could throw out about Trump that he completely screwed up. I despise Anthony Fauci. But I despise the man because of what he did to the economy and what he did to humans. I guess I'm not even making a statement so much as asking a question. What is it? Anyone over here in the comments. What is it? Do we hate, and this is something, and I'll accept that if this is the case. Do we hate ourselves and do we hate our fellow man so much that no matter what happens to other human beings, it just doesn't bother us anymore? But something happens to a cute squirrel or a cute raccoon or a cute puppy. Oh, now we're up in arms. What are we, John Wick? I've seen you guys at the range. You don't shoot that well. I've seen you guys on the match. You got no role. You're not John Wick. What is it about animals, dogs in particular, whatever, that's where we're over the line. Casus Belli. Casus Belli. You saw that, Casus Belli. What is that? Your cause, your grand cause. The straw that breaks the camel's back, the terrible incident that makes the American colonists say, enough, we want independence from the crown. Casus Belli, your cause. I don't understand why. animals over and over again become the casus belli for radical change. But you know what? If that's what it takes to get us there, I'm all about it. If what it is going to take for us to step up and thump our chest and say, here is my line in the sand, you go no further, and I will take up arms against you. If what it takes to get there is a half dozen squirrels, perfectly willing to make that sacrifice. Monty, that is what I call the squirrels. Monty. Every squirrel is Monty. I don't know why. When I'm driving and they get ready to run into the car, they run out in front of the car, it's just, like, don't do it, Monty. Don't do it. I started doing this like 12 years ago. I don't know why. Don't do it, Monty. Don't do it. So if it takes a half dozen Monties to get treated horribly or put to death unnecessarily by the state to get us to go, enough is enough, and break out the tar and feathers, well then bring out a parade of squirrels and raccoons. Give me a half dozen Harambis. Me, I'm kind of fond of my own species. Horrible as we can be, still kind of pro-human when we act like humans. Canine lives matter. Dude, I'm all about it. CLM. So how about squirrels lives matter? Are squirrels rodents? I don't know. So we'll just call them squirrels. SLM. Squirrels lives matter. Squirrels lives matter. If that's what it's going to take to get people over the line, if that's what it's going to take to be the casus belli, I am more than willing to see a half dozen cute little mammals sacrificed a day, if that's what it's going to take to get us there. I'm not saying that I want to see animals hurt and killed. I'm not saying that you guys know exactly what I'm saying and exactly what I'm not. I don't get it. Animals are naturally innocent. People aren't. Okay, that is something. That is okay. I'll entertain that. Stone, people have been programmed to feel for everything but other humans unless those humans are not part of Western society. Okay, that is another argument that I will entertain. But animals is casus belli, man. If that's what it takes to get us there, I'm all about it. I really, really am. But damned if I'm not puzzled about why. Why we can watch man's inhumanity to man. But if man's inhumanity to man results in the death of a small mammal, suddenly now it's one toke over the line. I get it. Somebody explain it to me. But if that's what it takes to get us there, I'm all about it. I want to move on here, guys. Digging in for Tuesday and the aftermath. We all know, don't we? I went over, and I'm going to see if I can pull this up in a sidebar tab. I want to give the play-by-play commentary for the past couple of elections. I've given the play-by-play commentary during the elections. I am not going to be doing that this year. I'll be making comments here and there, but I'm not devoting it to the play-by-play. I'm going to be in church. We're having election analysis on the fly at church. I think it will be available online if you guys want to check it out on Fire Ministry Spokane. We are all gathering together at 6:30 on Tuesday night, and we're going to stay until we see what's happening. All you guys can feel about it however you want to feel about it. There's no point in going over it again as we have here. The beauty of doing the play-by-play is that those comments are preserved, at least on Facebook, for all time. I'm thankful for the ones that I posted in 2020 and the comments that followed every one that I posted in 2020. Here's one from 2020. This is getting shady as too many states clearly read that the media refuses to call. They're leaving room to pull their late and mail-in ballots. Anything to enable them contesting the election results. I'm going to bed. I'll deal with this in the morning. But before that, earlier in the evening, Biden has 227 electoral votes with only one state, Minnesota, with 10 electoral votes still in play for him. He literally can't win. This media BS is as predictable as it is absurd. Now, if you go back and you look at the numbers as they rolled in, that was a factually accurate statement. As was this. If the media would actually call the states where Trump has an insurmountable lead, and Virginia, which the AP is still calling for Biden, Trump is at 296 electoral votes. It's over. Let the intellectual gymnastics begin. We have eyes, you lying. Add what they're giving him, plus the states where he's clearly won, but they're not calling him for it yet. He's at 284 electoral votes. It's over. They'll drag it out by any means and with any excuse, but it's done. These were my comments. And as I look back to the comments in response, these people were smarter than I was. I was way too optimistic. Every single one of these people were like, hey man, a water main, like for instance, on one of these, water main just broke in Georgia and they've stopped counting ballots in Atlanta. Ty McMahon, some sketchy is about to go down. In Pennsylvania, they were allowed to mail in ballots today. Some stuff I've read is they don't even have to be postmarked. Greg Cook, I think Biden will win. They'll pull ballots out of their ass for a week until it swings his way. Brother Jude at the time, some of these numbers they're showing and what they're saying is not adding up. Kirk Voigt that night, 98% reporting in Florida, and Trump has a 400,000 vote lead, and they still haven't called it. All the malfeasance as it happened. This is how we prevent gaslighting. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. None of this matters. Here's what matters. The only thing you can be sure of is that Tuesday night is not going to be like any other election night you have experienced in your adult life. That is the only thing that I can guarantee. Does not matter who wins or by what margin. The last election that we saw that we're likely to see in our lifetime, barring certain things happening. The last one that we saw that is going to resemble what we would think of as a normal election night was 2012. After 2016, there will never be another one like that. 2016 was the one that broke them. It broke the deep state. It broke the machine, for lack of a better word, irreparably. There is no excuse, and we all know it. Find me a hashtag here. There is no excuse, and we all know it. All of us, particularly us older folks, we remember before 2000. Remember, it was 2004. It was 2004 where they really started pushing hard to put the electronic ballot machines in, because that horrible thing that happened in Florida in 2000 and the hanging chads and the big recounts and all that other stuff. We can debate endlessly, and some people will. About what happened in 2000. Irrelevant. They moved to electronic voting machines. And all bets were off. There's no one out there who doesn't already know that electronic ballot machines are unreliable, they're hackable, they are connected to the internet, regardless of the disclaimers and the debunking. There's a million and one examples. The only way people trust electronic voting machines is when their side wins, as in 2020, because literally 4 years earlier, and then again 4 years before that, and again 4 years before that, the Democrats were screaming. You guys remember the manufacturers of the voting machines had ties with the Bush family? You guys remember? Oh, they're horrible. They're unreliable. They can be hacked. People can rig elections. They're fine until their side wins. We need to get back to paper ballots and hand counts. We absolutely do need to get back to paper ballots and hand counts. At the very least, we should get a paper receipt for our vote. I get a receipt when I buy a pack of smokes. I like to have that receipt election style, so when they insist that Marlboro Reds won, I can say, look, dude, Camel Wide Blue right here. And I got 1,000 guys behind me, puff, puff, puffing. We don't even get receipts. The intellectual gymnastics run rampant. We know why. Okay? Well, it's not that simple. Yes, it is that simple. Countries with more people than ours do it. Sometimes once a year. Intellectual gymnastics about why it won't work here. Paper ballots, intellectual gymnastics. Hand counts, intellectual gymnastics. Voter ID, intellectual gymnastics. The greatest truths are spoken in brevity. When you're having to jump through 100 hoops to justify your position, chances are you're dishonest. Chances are you're being dishonest when you've got to jump through 100 hoops to justify your position. None of this matters. It's going to roll the way it's going to roll. No matter who wins, it will not be like any other election night, and the months that follow between election night and the inauguration are not going to resemble any post-election pre-inauguration period that you have seen in your adult life. The stakes are too high, and the people in play are too strong. We could game it out. If Kamala wins but doesn't win this. If Trump wins the Electoral College but not the popular vote. If Trump wins the Electoral College and the popular vote but the Senate refuses to confirm. We could play out 100 different scenarios. I have leanings. I have ways that I think this is going to shake out. But God is my witness. I have no idea. No solid idea. Miss Charlie will thankfully be at work that night. Brother Mikey will be holding down the house, and I will be gathered with my brothers and sisters in Christ in church. I may or may not show up for class Wednesday, depending on how late this thing runs and how badly it gets out of whack. I'm not saying that I hope for any of these things. Quite the contrary. I would love to be wrong about all of this. I would love for this thing to just go smoothly and we have a clear winner, with minimal shenanigans. I'll tell you what I would love to see. Just me, heart of hearts. I would love to see minimal or even high-end shenanigans from the Democrats in swing states like Pennsylvania and Michigan, same as we saw in 2020. I would love to see that. And the numbers be so high for Trump that even the worst and most egregious cheats in the world are not enough. That he wins the Electoral College by a wide margin, that he wins the popular vote by the narrowest of margins, and that Kamala Harris concedes, no lawsuits get filed, and in January, Trump gets to step up and give us another inaugural address. If you're asking me what I would like to see happen, that's what I would like to see happen. You guys know that's not going to happen. There's not a hope in hell of that happening. Any single one of those factors could happen in and of its own, but that process is not going to happen. I want you guys to hold me accountable. I want to be wrong here. I want to be wrong. I have admonished you guys to participate. Even if you don't believe it, even if you believe they're going to steal it, make them steal it in the light of day. I stand by that. I've insisted and promised to every one of y'all that if shenanigans win the day, again, if it is an outright victory that is outright stolen, again, that I will publicly and vehemently disavow the voting process going forward. That is my word, and I stand by it. No equivocation. I'm not going to do the shifty bit where it's like, yeah, well, they tried, but they failed. You know, it's like, or, well, they tried, but they succeeded, but not to the degree. If it is clear that another 2020 has taken place and shenanigans have won yet another theft, I will publicly and vehemently denounce the voting process from here in perpetuity going forward. Having said that, I voted. I implore you to do the same. Participate in the process if it is possible for you to participate in the process. Even if you know in your heart of hearts they're going to steal it, do it anyway. Make them steal it in the light of day. There is a very real possibility that one party or the other, well, it's known for sure that one party is already, because we got ballot boxes on fire here in the Pacific Northwest. I don't know if you guys saw that. The maggot mob is already on the move. Anything but a guaranteed Kamala victory, you are going to have people in the streets. Be prepared for that. If you have not followed any of my advice prior to this, I implore you to follow my advice here. Have some food put back. Go get yourself at least 2 or 3 cases of bottled water. A case of bottled water is very cheap. I hope that you are armed. If you are not, I would try to keep as low a profile as possible. My house is going to be on lock. Brother Mikey has my house on lock, and I am going to be with a group of people not far from my house in a big tank of a diesel blazer that can blow through any roadblocks or any massive Antifa maggots. if I need to. Yeah, right, right. Yes, sir. Now choke on this. Can we get purple finger ink? Stone, I'd be all about it. Phil, you voted? Outstanding, brother. Outstanding. Julia Deal Magnamy voted early. No need for mail in ballots unless you're military. We have early voting. No excuse not to vote. Love you, bro. Love you right back, sweetheart. Julie's absolutely right. Square your house away, people. Oldest daughter, her first election. That's outstanding. I remember my first presidential election. It was Clinton and Bush, and I voted Clinton. There you are. Just got in. Catch the front end. Catch it tomorrow, brother, and take your time. I put out a little prayer request for you during the opener, brother. We're here for it. I appreciate you just ducking in to check in, man. Take your time. Handle what you got to handle, brother. God be with you. God be with you for sure. In any case, folks, I'm not going to belabor the point. We already know what time it is. We already know what's coming. And what we know is coming is that we have no idea what's coming. What we do know is that it's not going to be business as usual. That could be not business as usual on a very minimal scale, or it could be not business as usual. It's falling apart and we get locked down and go under martial law. I'm not being hyperbolic in the least. Deep state gonna deep state. Status gonna state, as they say, as I say. Status gonna state. Stasi Karen's gonna Stasi Karen. You have a whole lot of people whose only hope, talking about the white college liberal crowd, particularly white college liberal women, whole lot of hard leftists, the only hope. Whole lot of predators, whole lot of pedos, whole lot of groomers, whose only hope is Kamala victory. She's not actually running anything any more than Biden was. But that's who the deep state front man is. And the deep state going to take care of its own. If you think for 1 second they're above rolling tanks in the streets, guess again. Pelosi wanted heavy machine guns at the Capitol. Who's going to man those? You think they won't give the order for the military to fire on American citizens? Guess again. I'm not saying Trump wouldn't do it. What I am saying is that Trump had the chance before and he didn't. So if we're going strictly on track record, well, all bets are off Tuesday. Do not be afraid, particularly if you're walking in the truth. If you're walking in the light of Christ, there is nothing to be afraid of. What do they say? We fight not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against power of evil in high places. Whether you examine that through a scriptural lens or not, we can all agree that things are catastrophically out of hand. And that the current path we are on isn't working. And that the stakes of this election are so absurdly high, and the people who have the most to lose are willing to go to such absurd lengths to protect that power that we literally cannot make any predictions. So we control the things that we can control. You should have squared yourself away physically. You should have squared yourself away armaments. You should have squared yourself away in terms of water purification and food put back and first aid and preps and every other thing. Some of you did. I know which ones I can look at and count on and know that you have something put back and you're good. And today, that's just about everybody today. But do a quick inventory for me tonight. Do a quick inventory. Figure out what you may be lacking a little bit and shore that up. Feel me? If you think, hey man, look, go to Walmart or Winco. A case of canned soups, right, is going to cost you $25. A case of canned soup and 25 pounds of rice is going to cost you $50 or less. And if nothing happens on Tuesday and I'm just another tinfoil hat nut job, guess what? You got food for the next month. That's the worst that happens. Square yourself up. Put yourself close to your family, particularly the vulnerable members of your family. If you've got elderly close to you, make sure that if they're not with you, that they're at least provided for if something gets sideways. If you have children out there who are, say, college age, first year of college, second year of college, whatever, hopefully you have taught them well enough that they have something squared away. If not, tell them to come home. Tell them to come home. If they're already home, tell them to take a long weekend. What's the worst that happens? They don't have perfect attendance. What's the worst that happens? They miss a lecture that they can make up. If something goes sideways, stakes are going to be way higher than that. So do that. Do that for your family. And for those of you who share the faith with me, and even for those of you that don't, but might be sitting on the fence, pray. Pray. That's a pretty good solution to any number of things. And it will at the very least provide a little bit of strength in your soul to move forward against whatever odds are placed against you. Man, I don't feel comfortable praying. I really don't know what to say. Carry on a conversation with the man. Carry on a conversation. He knows your heart. Keep the curse words to a minimum and just speak. Sermon on the Mount, he gave you a really, really choice one. Our Father who art in heaven, yeah, pretty choice. Excellent wordcraft in that. Concise, no wasted stuff to trim off. Nice, concise prayer. Anything else? You got nothing? Pray that. Get comfortable speaking. Because I promise you, what's coming, you're going to be calling on him a lot. And it's going to be way better for you and everybody close to you if you've already got an open dialogue. Sometimes he speaks to people a little bit differently. Sometimes he will meet the audience halfway. He doesn't speak French to Englishmen. Everybody else that I've seen, he can say, be still and know that I'm God. Be still and know that I am God. That's profound. That's heavy. He comes to me, I get sit down, shut up, watch me work. And you know what? I'm good with that. Totally okay with that. I don't mind the admonition because it ensures that I have that open dialogue. Call on him. It's right there in the scripture, brother. Call on him. What do you have to lose? You're going to be breathing anyway. Might as well make that breath count. Inhale, exhale. Lord God. But going forward, you are going to want to have that open dialogue. For we fight not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and forces of darkness in high places. That mask is about to get, in my estimation, I think that mask is about to get torn right the heck off Tuesday night, depending on how things roll. I pray that I am wrong. Pray, but prepare. I think God could get behind that. It's not the country I grew up in, man. A whole lot of that sentiment going around. Don't ever let anyone belittle you for pointing that out. Say that that's a product of your privilege or a product of your selfishness or this, that, and the other thing. You're longing for a good America that never existed. They're lying. Don't be gaslit. We know what we lived through, especially the older people here. Guys like David, guys like Turtle, even. If you're 30 and up, man, you know it wasn't always like this. Doesn't have to always be like this. Tuesdays where we see which way it's going to go and how hard we're going to have to fight to get there. So in light of that, I'm going to close with a prayer. Lord God, I offer up a prayer for our nation. And our nation hadn't been your most favorite child in a long, long time. We have drifted from everything. We've drifted not just from the words of our founders that were rooted in that scripture, but we've drifted away from words that predate that scripture. Before we even had the message. And then once we anchored it to those biblical principles, we clung fast to it and we did really, really well. It's right there in the scripture that our nation would be favored, but we fell out of that a long time ago. Everything that is happening right now is entirely predictable, Lord, but I feel it. I feel a change in the air. I feel a change in the moment. I feel a change in the hearts of a lot of very good men who, as good men, can carry this nation forward, Lord. And we're here, all of us, saying, here we are, send me. I have unequivocal faith in your divine plan, Lord. Unequivocal faith in your divine plan and in my small place in it, and all the rest of these people who are gathered here, their small place in it. I ask that you keep your protective hand over them, to watch over them, to protect them from the ways of the adversary, from the tools of the adversary. But I ask you to show them light, Lord. I ask you to show them light and guidance. Because right now there's plenty of us out here who don't have a clue. We just know that the direction we're on is wrong, and that course needs to be corrected. Give us the strength to correct that course and the clarity to set a new one in line with your will and your word, so that you can find us pleasing to your eye again, Lord. I pray that your hand be over the minds of all our leaders, our true leaders, the ones who are really out there, the ones who really have faith in God and family and all of those things that made us great before. Pray for them, because they're the ones that have the hardest battle against what we're up against. Pray for every single one of these people here at home. Those who trust in you, Lord, and there are plenty of us here. Strength, clarity, discernment, because the deceiver will do what he does, try to lead us astray. We need that clarity, we need that discernment, and then once we've set that course, we got to have the strength to follow it, Lord. I pray that you gift us with those things, as you gifted us with our redemption and our salvation, your grace, your mercy, the blood of your Son that bought redemption for what otherwise could not have been redeemed, and we are thankful for that. We are here to serve, Lord. Here I am, send me. We all share that sentiment, Lord. Here I am, send me. We go forward, washed in the blood and ready to carry out your will. Say the word. Pray in the name of the risen Christ, whom I ever serve. Amen. Ain't nothing somber, people. Ain't nothing somber. It's somber in the sense of reverence, but it's not somber in the sense of depressed. We're rolling forward, people. We're rolling forward. Tuesday is going to be a revelation, man. Tuesday is where we get to find out who they are, and we get to show them who we are. Deep down, we know who we are. They are capable of anything. But spoiler alert, I read the book, we win. Just no matter how ugly it's got to get between now and then. And if you're up for the fight, you're up for it. I believe that a lot of you are. If you catch yourself doubting, man, just remember David. Remember David. He had a reward, sure. So did everybody on that field. Everybody on that field had that reward. None of them would step up. Be the one who steps up. Put some rocks in your pocket. Get your butt out there on the front line. It's going to be good, brother. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. Because we're called for it. We're called for it. That's what we're here for, man. That's what we're here for. Don't step away from that. Don't step away from that responsibility for an instant. Step into it. Because that's your gift. That's your purpose. Find that strength to move forward. I'm gonna pass around that digital collection plate. You guys do what you will with that. I'm on Cash App, I'm on Venmo, I'm on PayPal, I'm on all that good stuff. You guys do what you can, but I understand. Hey, man, some of that money you guys need to spend on food. You need to spend on ammo, and I totally get that. Plus, we're still living in a Biden-Harris economy, reluctantly and regrettably. So you might not be able to kick down. That's totally all right too, man. Here's what you can do: repost. Spread that gospel, man. Preach some gospel to some people, man. You don't have to carry my message. Carry the boss man's message. It's right there. There's a book. You might have heard of it. Get your face in it and spread that word as well. But let him know. There's a crane operator with some opinions. He gets rants and raves every Sunday for a couple hours. Spread it, man. Get that outreach out there. Let them know. Bring them all together, man. We need like minds and kindred spirits. But here's what you can do, not just for me, but for yourself, most of all. Stone, you already know. Hashtag live the 3, baby. Live the 3. The hell is he talking about live the 3? I tell you what it is, man. The 3 prime directives. You guys already know. The signal to noise ratio is all messed up. It's all noise. It's all noise. That signal, that truth to punch through that fog of lies, that's the signal breaking through the noise. You've got to be that signal that breaks through the noise. You got to be light in a world full of darkness. They will try to bury you in the darkness, convince you that there's nothing left but darkness, demoralize you, dehumanize you, emasculate you with the darkness. It doesn't have to be like that. You've got to be that light in the darkness. You got to be able to carry that light through the darkness, which leads me to the third and final rule, which would be the iron rule. You guys know what I'm talking about. You've got to be strength in a world full of weakness. And strength here and here, yeah, that's great. But it's not just about this kind of strength. You got to have that strength here, and that head's going to follow what? You got to have that strength here. It's going to follow that heart. It's got to be backed up by a spine and a little bit of strength here for you guys out there. It might be flailing a little bit, but that's okay, man. Why? Without strength, none of the rest of it matters. If you don't have strength, you're not going to be able to carry that truth through a fog of lies and punch that signal through the noise. If you don't have strength, you're not going to have the tenacity to carry that light through the darkness, and you're not going to have the punch to drive that light through to the other side of the darkness and reach those people on the other end. So without strength, none of the rest of it matters. So when you pray for strength, clarity, and discernment, because the ways of the deceiver are all around you. That's that noise. That's that darkness. You got to be able to punch through. Strength, clarity, and discernment always. Live the 3, baby. Appreciate every one of y'all, man. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. God bless each and every one of y'all. People, we're going to get through it. We're going to get through it. Chin down, knuckles up. Ready for the fight. It ain't coming, people. It's here. Spoiler alert, we win. God bless y'all. See you next Sunday.